One of the challenges I had growing up was the idea that I love sports, but in the way of the old commercial, I love chili dogs, but chili dogs don't love me. I loved sports, but sports and I didn't always get along. I remember being in the 7th grade when I went out for the basketball team. I had one advantage, and that was I was a fairly sizable guy, not very tall. I've never been very tall for my age, but I was a pretty stout guy for my size in the 7th grade. And so I got to play those positions where you basically stand still like a statue and let people run into you. I did that well. I wasn't tall enough to really slap the ball down, but I could definitely get in the way. And I got in the way very well. What I didn't do very well was dribble the ball. I mean, to this day, I can't dribble a ball more than one hand. I do good to switch from one hand to the other. My boys can dribble the ball through their legs and shoot pretty well, and I lose a game of horse 9 times out of 10. The mechanics of basketball were completely lost on me. I remember James Malinchak recently telling a story, and I'm sure he's told it many times, but this particular time I heard him talking about how he would practice basketball when he was a kid. And he shot for hours. He shot with a weighted vest on. He shot in the sun. He shot in the dark. He shot in the cold just to make the free throw, just to be able to hit it consistently every time, to be a good shooter. And he just was throwing up bricks like he was building a house. And an old guy next door told him one time, "You're doing it wrong, and that's why you're never making them. And all this other stuff that you're doing, I admire your tenacity and your discipline, but you're still doing it wrong. Because you got your elbows out here like wings instead of up here under the ball. And where the elbow goes, the ball goes. And if the elbow's pointed out here, that's where the ball goes, because that's how the arm bends. The arm doesn't bend that way. It bends this way. Mechanics is mechanics. And I don't care if you're working on a Porsche or a Tesla, if you're talking about teaching an elementary student or you're talking about the NBA, mechanics is mechanics. Now, there are some things that we look at and we see them as mysteries or arts. We see them as paranormal or parapsychology. And we think, well, there's not really any mechanics there. It's so wishy-washy. It's such a gray area. There's really no way to know that what you're doing is actually working, and especially for those who are on the outside. I was in my late 40s. The first time I heard James Malinchak say, "Where the elbow goes, that's where the ball goes." I'm telling you, I don't remember any 7th, 8th grade coach saying those words to me. I do remember when the coach put me down there, I guess the position is called post, right under the basket. And he said, "All I want you to do is stay at this end of the court. And when that little fast break running guy of theirs breaks from the other end and comes down, he outruns everybody on the court. Nobody can get ahead of him. I just want you to be sure that you are there under the basket when he comes. And I don't care what he does, you make sure he doesn't get the shot off." I met him at the top of the key with an elbow to his sternum. He did not get the shot off. I think he had a couple of bruised ribs for a while, completely knocked the wind out of him. He wasn't even able to throw his own free throws. Somebody else had to shoot the technical. And I was ejected from the game and asked to leave the team and go back to football off season. And I played football all the way till I got in the Air Force. I played for the USAF Eagles for 1 season. The idea of pointing your elbow in the right way, the understanding of the mechanics of where I was supposed to be and how to prevent him from making the shot and how to mess up his footwork or whatever else. All of those things were lost on me, and they may as well have been psychic phenomenon, because they were just as complicated to me. They were just as far outside of my scope of understanding. So let me just lay on you a little bit. This is going to sound really deep and heavy, but it's really not. The reality is the mechanics of mental work and the mechanics of communication and the mechanics of relationship, you use them every day. Every day. The challenge is you may not know that you're using them, so you don't know to measure the outcome, And you don't know if what you've done is good or bad, right or wrong, impactful or damaging. Perhaps you've heard, when you use language like "don't spill the coffee," the subconscious mind doesn't hear "don't," because there is no picture for "don't." There is no emotion for "don't." And since the subconscious mind works in pictures and emotions, it doesn't hear "don't." Instead, it creates a picture of spilling the coffee. When you give the instruction, "don't spill the coffee," you've just instructed that person to spill the coffee. Think through it for a moment. As a leader, you have probably instructed your sales team, or your manufacturing team, or your administrative team, or your executive team, or even the board. These are the 5 things we're going to stop doing, or we're going to not do, or we're going to don't do this year. And the brain doesn't think that way. An instruction to not do something is mechanically an instruction to do something. When you're crafting your vision, or you're instructing your children, same rules apply. It's a mechanics thing. It doesn't matter who's shooting the basketball, the position of the elbow is going to direct where the ball goes. It's a mechanics thing. It doesn't matter who's shooting the ball, that's the way it works. Gravity never goes sideways. Gravity goes up. No, it doesn't. Gravity always goes to the center of the earth. How far does that gravitational field expand? Well, we know at least to the atmosphere. We know there's a direct relationship between the earth and the moon because of the gravitational pull of the earth. Right? How far do the mechanics extend beyond your ability to think, to imagine, to visualize? Have you ever operated with a shared vision where someone that you're working with side by side has exactly the same agenda, exactly the same plan, everything you want to accomplish, they want to accomplish, all of the heartfelt emotions that you have about finishing this project to this level, they have the same heartfelt emotions? It's a powerful environment. It's where synergy comes from. If you're the leader creating the vision for your organization, creating the vision for your life, for your business, for your strategies, is absolutely critical. And it's your job. But if you're the leader, it's also your job to emotionally convey the purpose and the stated intended accomplishment of that vision in such a way that everyone who has a stake in it, everyone who's going to be asked to perform some action in it, everyone who's going to be asked to invest in it, mentally, emotionally, with effort, with finances, every one of them need to have the same heartfelt emotion toward the accomplishment of that vision, the fruit of that vision. If that vision is to feed the homeless, or that vision is to build a mansion, or that vision is to build a hospital, or that vision is to build an empire, whatever that vision is, whoever that vision benefits, whatever the end win is, the biggest win, if you can look out there and go, I know when I accomplish this, it's going to look like that. The emotions that you have in that accomplishment should be clearly communicated to everyone at every level who has an investment in it as well. From the mailroom operator to the executive committee. Now, how do you do that? Well, you need to understand some of the mechanics of communication. You need to understand that the story that you tell emotionally impacts people, whether you intend for it to or not. The story that you tell verbally and the story that you tell subconsciously and emotionally, are they the same? Do they resonate? Do you have the big sign, "We're all about customers," on the outside of your building, but behind the scenes, everything you do is about the bottom line without regard for the customer? Recently, a major multinational corporation revealed that for a decade or so, they've been intentionally manipulating the consumer market for the bottom line of the organization. The company has been profiting on a manipulation of their own consumer. I think many of us suspected it as far back as the iPhone 4 because mine still works. I still have one of those old iPods somewhere. I mean, the old ones, the 80 gig with the thumb wheel on it and a little LCD screen, I still have one of those and it still plays music. But heaven forbid you try to put it on Wi-Fi and update the music because it will lose its mind. Because they fed it a bug. The battery starts shutting down. It won't stay charged anymore. All you got to do is update. If you don't update, it continues to work. Is it really consumer-centric to force people to upgrade or update their devices? But see, it's so easy to operate a company of 1, 2, or 3 people, or 3,000 people, or 300,000 people, where the vision that's been cast for all of those who would invest looks different than the daily operation. What you say is important. How you portray yourself in the public, that public image, that public reputation, that reputation management, all of that is so very important. But it should be both driven by and proven in your daily activity. As John Maxwell says, every day matters. What you intend to accomplish is great, and the grandiosity of your desired accomplishments, your intention to succeed is incredible. That's awesome. But if what you're doing today doesn't lead you there, the mechanics are off. If you want to be in perfect physical condition by June 1st to hit the pool, but you're eating 6 packs of donuts a day, your vision and your operations are not in line. And the mechanics will prevent the vision from happening. It doesn't matter how passionate you are about that vision. It doesn't matter how much fruit or revelation or result or impact that vision would have on anybody else around you. If the daily mechanics are not followed, that vision's not going to happen. And yet there's something in the vision that has its own mechanics. When I talk about the insuperable vision, the word insuperable means to not easily be overwhelmed, overcome, or passed by. An insuperable vision is so powerfully created with the Almighty as a co-conspirator, who's sharing with you what the Almighty expects of you, wants of you, is willing to partner with you in, that the emotions in you rise up and you realize that's not just something I'd like to do or that I'd want to do, that's something I'm made to do. I am the best formed tool for that job. And I have the final endorsement. I have the best input one could get and the best motivation one could get. Now, if you're looking at your vision from that lens to start with, that type of vision will be really hard to overcome, really hard to overwhelm, and really hard to pass by. And when you get buy-in from everyone on your team toward that vision, the daily execution of it will meet obstacles, guaranteed. Every time you look at that vision, you're going to be motivated even more to see it fulfilled. But that doesn't make the obstacles go away. It just makes them easier to fight. In fact, you may have more obstacles. I was listening to John Maxwell, some of his training yesterday. He was talking about how people are driven by or impacted by wealth. And he said, most people forget that there's a certain level of problems that comes with a $50,000 a year job. And most people think, well, if I went from the 50,000 to the 75, 25% of my problems would go away because I'd have half the larger income. You say, well, there may be certain problems that go away between 50 and 75, or 30 and 50, or 50 and 150. But understand this too. If there are problems of life that come with a $50,000 income, there may well be 3 times as many problems of life that come with a $150,000 income, or a $500,000 income, or a $1 million income. And it's not to say that the more money you earn, your problems will go away, but the bigger opportunities you have, the bigger obstacles there are to test your tenacity. Mechanics. It's the way the world works, the way the universe works. It's the way it's designed to work. So that at every level of great accomplishment, which brings great influence, great responsibility, great impact, great reach, at every level, you're tested in your ability, your competence, and your worthiness. I don't know if you know what a 500 Winchester is, the handgun that you could literally hunt elephants with, because the projectile that comes out of it and the amount of power in it, you can barely hold it in your 2 hands, and it might hit you in the forehead, but if necessary, it would kill an elephant or a rhinoceros. That's a lot of power. That's not the kind of power you hand over to an 8 or 9-year-old and say, hey, let's do some target practice. That's not what it's made for. And the mechanics of that device are such that it takes a substantial physical person to hold it still on target while it fires. You don't give the keys to your brand new Tesla to an 8-year-old. Why? Because there's a lot of power. I hear the newest one is the fastest production car made, a quarter mile in under 9 seconds, 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. That's a lot of power. You don't hand those keys to a 9-year-old and say, here, take it for a spin. Not until they've been tested. And I don't mean just get a driver's license tested. I mean, put them on the track. Test them in the corners. Test them in the curves. Can they handle the acceleration? What about the braking? Will they over-accelerate and freak themselves out and oversteer and then crash the car? Testing to prove your worthiness to handle. If you can't handle 30,000 well, 50,000 could be dangerous. 100,000 would definitely be dangerous. And 150,000 or 500,000 would be fatal. That's why many people who win the lottery are broke again in a couple of years. They never learned to handle where they were, much less where they were going. And one thing that I find true, mechanically, emotionally, and practically, is that as we create our vision with a supernatural influence in that vision, inspired by the Almighty, it tends to remain true that all of the tests necessary to see that vision fulfilled, they come naturally. They come along the way. Like a good coach on the basketball court. Let's test their agility. Let's test their speed. Let's test their ball handling ability. Can they dribble? Can they dribble backwards? Can they dribble sideways? Can they dribble in a circle? Can they dribble with both hands? Can they dribble between their feet? Can they dribble and pass the ball and then change balls? Can they run while they dribble? Can they shoot? Can they score? Can they pass? Can they play as a team? See, each one of those levels of progressions, they're each mechanics within the game. They all must be mastered to be a success. But regardless your natural talent, regardless your mastery of the mechanics, if you can't learn the outside parts of the mechanics of basketball, like good team work and proper diet and proper care for your own body, those mechanics will impact the game as well. And you may never make it past middle school. Maybe you make it to high school. Maybe you make it to college. Maybe you even make it to the NBA. But it's only because you've mastered everything from dribbling the ball while standing still to how you manage your reputation and your relationship with your coaches. All of those things are mechanics in the game of basketball and in the elite levels of basketball. If you're a coach who works with the leadership mind, there are mechanics at every level that must be tested. Those relationships must be tested. Your own self-discipline must be tested. The mechanics of how you run your business, all of those things must be tested from the very bottom to the very top and everything along the way. Regardless what your career choice is, from day one until today, you will find that you have been tested along the way. And the mechanics directly impact your vision. When your vision is inspired, each of those tests will come with great intentionality. Each of those tests are something that are well within your ability to do. Each of those tests will make you a better person once you've passed them. Each of those tests will increase your influence and impact once you pass them. Each of those tests will take you to another level once you pass them. But trying to go to the next level when you haven't passed the test on this level is potentially fatal for your career and potentially damaging to others. That's a big deal. It's all about the mechanics. Can you follow the processes that are already set in place? Can you operate within the realm of knowledge and understanding where you are with the tools that you have? Again, one of my greatest privileges in working with vision that is inspired vision is knowing that you will never be tested beyond that which you can handle. It's not going to happen. And you won't be tested in a way that will destroy you. That usually happens when you get outside of your calling. I was about 5 years old, and for Christmas I received a toolbox. It had a pair of pliers in it. It's a tiny little pancake style, just flat, flip open top toolbox, and it had a screwdriver and a pair of pliers and a hammer and a ruler. And I think it may have had a little roll-up tape measure. And I remember sitting out on the curb one day playing with my toolbox. I had nothing particular to do. But I took my hammer out and I started pounding on the curb with it. And I realized that if I hit just the right spot on the edge where the rounding of the driveway and the seam of the curb came together, that I could chip off pieces of rock. And I thought it was really cool to chip off pieces of that driveway with my little hammer. And so I just kept chipping, pounding away until I finally got yelled at for destroying the curb in the driveway. And I moved to another spot to pound with my little hammer to try to chip away at something else. But now I was working on hardened concrete, not just the cement of the driveway. And on about the fourth blow, my hammer broke. Shattered like glass. My little toy pewter hammer wasn't made for that. It was way out of its category. It probably would have hammered in some plastic nails, but that's about it. It wasn't made for breaking rocks in the hot sun. And instead, it broke my hammer. When you live your life creating your own visions, building your own empires, creating your own companies and organizations and leading people because it benefits you or makes you feel good, and your vision is not inspired by the Almighty, you're on your own. And you may well be a toy hammer against hardened concrete, operating outside your purpose, doing things you weren't made for. And in that arena, tests will come that will destroy you. Tests will come that you're not prepared for. Tests will come that are outside of your ability to withstand. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's not if, it's when. If you're operating in a vision that's driven by your own greed, by your own desires, by your own passions, and it's not inspired, you run that risk every day. I'm just saying. It's worth going back to the drawing board and looking at what you were made to do. What are your greatest gifts? What are your greatest talents? What are your natural passions driven by? When your vision is created around those things and not just greed, not just money, you'll find that you're fulfilling your purpose. And there's a lot more contentment in filling your purpose while being tested than there is in being tested for something you're not made for. It's all about mechanics. From psychology to Tesla to the NBA to the NFL to the WPGA, it's all about mechanics. There are things that are set in motion, expectations, laws of gravity and principle, rules of operation. And when you try to operate outside those, they bite you. One of those, mechanics, is an aligned vision. A vision that's aligned not just with your desire to be wealthy or your desire to have influence or your desire to build an empire, but a vision that's aligned with your made purpose to begin with. What can you do that no one else can do like you? It's pretty important stuff to know. Take a moment, if you will, and just ponder. Given my gifts, given my talents, given my assets, given those things that I love to do, if I was an outsider looking in, what would my purpose be? What would you do with this thing? Would you drive nails with a screwdriver? Would you paint an oil painting with a banana? Would you mow your lawn with a spoon? No, because everything has a purpose, and you have a purpose. It's best revealed in what you love to do and what you're naturally gifted at. If your vision is aligned with that, you're well on your way. The mechanics are started off right. But I can promise you this too. There aren't a whole lot of parts interchangeable between a Tesla and a Porsche. Both high-performance cars, both very fast cars, both very well-made cars. Their parts are not very interchangeable. They have a different purpose. Completely different purpose. It's all about mechanics. Get your vision right. Pass the test of the daily improvement and the skill sets that you need to master to be the best in the world at what you do. You will be well on your way to success, whether it shows up as finance or it shows up as incredible results and a grand legacy. If your vision and your purpose are one, you got the mechanics right. Hey, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right there as you're watching on the fan page. Make sure you get the notifications when the next one comes up. Or if you're watching on the iTunes podcast, make sure you share that with some friends. The more people we can influence, the more lives we can see changed, the more we can see our world begin to move in the right direction with less division and less disharmony. More people doing what they were made to do. That's just good mechanics. I'm J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.